What's up, guys? In today's video, I will be going over exactly how I took a micro creator from making $0 a month with his personal brand to over $28,000 a month in revenue in just a 90-day time period. And this was done completely without running a single paid ad. And as you can see here, we actually had two different payment processors, which is a reason I'll get into a little bit later into this video. But if you add it up, you can see we cash collected over $22,000 in just 17 days. And in this video, I will be going over exactly every single step of the system we put in place from A to Z on how I was able to help this creator get these results. And something that I do want to mention here, if you look at his YouTube statistics before we started talking together and I helped him out, he had posted only 6 videos, had gotten a little bit over 700 subscribers and almost 29,000 views. Keep in mind, this creator was 16 years old at the time. Now he's 17. But essentially, he's in high school, so he has a whole lot of other things he needs to manage. Um, and his original plan for monetizing his personal brand really didn't have a clear strategy behind it. And he really felt burnt out before I actually helped him and showed him how to scale this up the proper way. And the reason I'm saying all this is to show you guys, when you actually follow a step-by-step strategy and focus on the right things, you are able to make a lot of money without having to first spend a lot of time as a creator on your actual personal brand, but also, you're able to make a lot of money without having to have a massive audience. And that's exactly what this video is about, showing you guys exactly how you can do this for yourself based on what I did for this creator. So if you are a content creator, coach, consultant, something along those lines, and you are looking to scale or start your own coaching offer or info product, this video is going to help you exactly with that process. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover for the context. I'm not going to be releasing the actual creator himself just due to privacy reasons, but I will tell you guys the niche that he is in is a super unique niche that's actually really hard to make money in, because it revolves around like music and music production, making beats, stuff along those lines. And that niche, first of all, is pretty small, and the majority of it is composed of people who are from pretty low class countries, so they don't have a lot of purchasing power. So you're dealing with a lot of broke leads, and it is definitely a lot trickier to sell some sort of info product in this space as well, because in this specific niche there is a lot of skepticism around advice, because there are a lot of fake gurus, just like in any niche, but in this niche particularly, um, there's just a lot of false information being spread, because it is really hard for people to succeed in this industry. So instead of being able to get results themselves, they just go on YouTube and start like preaching their own advice. And this really creates a lot of skepticism in this market with, not just this creator's audience, but just the broader audience in general, where they have a really hard time justifying, paying for some sort of coaching. But as you can see, we were able to overcome that due to the things I'm going to be going over in this video. And with that said, we can get started to go into exactly what I did for this creator. And the very first step was to actually optimize his content, because he was just posting on YouTube, as I showed you guys before. He had 6 videos posted, and I didn't really care about building up his presence on Instagram or TikTok with short form content. And this is a common mistake I often see creators make, because they don't realize that if the majority of your audience is from short form, that's kind of a brain rot audience that's really gonna be low quality. And it's going to be really hard to sell an audience like that on something that's going to be high ticket and more sophisticated. And there's numerous studies out there, but the most common one that is used to prove this point is Google's 7-11-4 rule. And it essentially states that in order for somebody to buy something or to become extremely likely to buy some sort of product or service from somebody else online, they need to have consumed around 7 hours of content from that specific creator or brand. And I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, but essentially it's just the more time somebody has spent consuming your content, the more likely they're going to be to buy from you. So if you're really relying on short form content to nurture your leads, it's going to be really hard because you probably don't remember the last short form video you watched. I definitely don't remember the last short form video I watched. So if your audience only sees 30 seconds of you, every 30 minutes for 4 or 5 times a day, for them to reach that 7 hour mark, it's going to take a lot longer compared to if you're pumping out super high quality long form YouTube videos. With this specific creator, like I said, he was really burnt out and didn't have a clear direction with any of this. So I had to kind of help him optimize his content to build trust in this space. And essentially, I won't go over like all the details in this because I don't want to make this video too long, but I had to help him with his hooks so they could become more engaging and boost his retention so YouTube would actually push his videos to more people. I had to help him with his actual like personal brand in terms of defining it and showing him how to actually present himself as an authority, but in a super authentic way that stood out from like all the other BS out there. And yeah, just telling him what to say, how to say it. And I helped with the content ideation. So I scripted some YouTube videos for him, came up with the titles, thumbnails, the scripts, all of that stuff. And that was really the first thing I wanted to do because I knew this creator had potential. But the first thing we really needed to do to build up this foundation is make sure he had a solid presence on YouTube that was super micro niched, which essentially means that his content would be very bottom of funnel. And bottom of funnel content is content that attracts a super, super specific ICP and converts them from watching your video to getting them to take the next step, which is, going through your funnel and discovering your offer. And an example of top of funnel content would be something super broad that's designed to just get reach, but not really convert your audience yet. And that's something that you can implement later. But if you're a creator who's still starting out, and you really want to make money with some sort of offer, you want to focus on hyper specific bottom of funnel content that's going to target a very specific ICP and convert that ICP from a viewer to somebody who is going to take action and, buy your service, product, whatever it may be. So basically, to recap, just the whole point is to not really try and go broad and as viral as possible at first, but you want to become as specific and narrow down to one ICP. And just get literally as specific as possible. So once we had that, it was time to actually build the strategy around this creator's actual offer. And there are 8 core pillars that are essentially present for any online coaching business. And those are the market, which is the niche, the offer, which is the problem you are solving for your specific niche, the funnel, which is how you are going to be getting your market to see the offer that you are presenting, traffic generation, so where and how people are going to see your funnel, the sales process, which is how you are going to convert that traffic into sales, onboarding process of your offer, pretty self-explanatory. the service delivery of the offer. So, what does somebody actually get once they pay? And the final pillar is the scaling components. So, how do you systemize this and make it extremely high leverage so you can keep on making as much money as possible without having to constantly add more and more onto your plate? And the market and the offer are the first two pillars, and they really go hand in hand because without doing proper market research, you won't be able to craft an offer that sells itself. And this is the main thing that I see so many creators and coaches who are trying to sell some sort of info product go wrong. And if you get this wrong, it's just going to make everything else in this whole process 10 times harder, and it'll essentially just be an uphill battle. And I don't want that for you guys. I don't want that for my clients. So this is how we do this the right way. First step is doing the market research. And the reason this is so important is because you don't want to actually guess what your audience wants and just throw something out there. In order to create an offer that sells itself, you just need to look at what the biggest gap in your market is, where there's a lot of demand, and simply supply that demand. Because if people are having this certain problem and you can supply a solution to it, boom, that offer is going to sell itself instead of you having to seem like some sort of sellout that's just pushing, some mid product or offer to your audience because you want to make more money. And if your audience senses that, you're going to lose trust. And when you lose trust, it becomes even harder to actually build up your brand and sell anything. So basically, the best way to go about this is talk to your market slash audience directly. And for this specific creator, I already had a lot of knowledge about this specific market, so I didn't really need to do too much market research, but it's still really important to understand your specific audience as a creator, because even if you take a look at two creators who are in the exact same niche, both their audiences will have some overlap, but they will also be unique in some senses. So if you can understand your audience slash market better than they understand themselves, then you'll be at a point where it's really easy to craft things that are going to sell themselves, and your audience is just going to line up with their credit card glued to their forehead waiting to buy without you having to hard sell or really push anything. And if you are somebody who doesn't have a lot of market research done and you're simply just guessing what your audience is going to want, the best way to go about this is to do an Instagram poll slash story sequence. Or let's say if the majority of your audience is on a different platform like YouTube or Twitter, you can just use those platforms instead. But um, for let's give an example. Let's say you want to start an offer on teaching people how to start their own agency. You could put up a poll that asks something along the lines of like, "Hey, I'm trying to make better content for you guys. I want to understand my audience better. So tell me which one you are below. Are you somebody who's interested in starting your agency, somebody who's started an agency but failed in the past, or somebody who currently runs an agency and wants to keep on scaling?" That's just a easy example so you guys understand what I'm talking about. But again, you really want to start understanding your audience and where the majority of them are at, because it's going to make it 10 times easier. I literally can't stress this enough, but as simple as it sounds, it's really what makes or breaks a super effective offer. And like I said, with this specific market and niche, I already knew a lot about it. So for this creator, we just asked a simple poll. And then based on people who responded, we had some conversations in the DMs just to kind of go a little bit deeper and really start to see what the common patterns were. And right here, I have my no-brainer offer master doc, and these first three sections are essentially everything I want to know before I start thinking about the actual offer. So this includes, stuff like your audience's biggest fears, their strongest desires or aspirations, the limiting beliefs that are holding them back from actually achieving those desires, what they believe is causing their current problem. Uh, I'm not gonna go over all of this just to save time, but you want to know their gender, age range, education level, location. What are they buying to solve their problem? What are they already following for advice, inspiration? Who do they trust in your space? Um, all of these things you really want to know because this will give you a full picture. And again, it just makes the selling process so much easier. If you want to get access to this document, you can just DM me on Instagram and I will give it to you guys for free. The first 3 sections in this document is everything you want to be able to answer before you focus on crafting your offer. The next 3 sections in this document are essentially the questions you want to answer so you can craft your offer based on your market research. And it's really important to craft an offer that is in a category of one, because if you don't have any competition, then you have all the leverage and you can control all the rules on how your offer works, the pricing, the overall structure, all of that stuff. And you want to make it a no-brainer offer where your audience is just going to feel stupid to say no to. And the way you do that, right, is you identify your super specific ICP, and then you figure out how you're going to help them get their dream outcome slash dream desires, whatever it may be, in some sort of short time frame. Obviously you don't want to lie about the time frame, but you want to make it realistic. But you want to include some sort of time frame in your offer, because offers that have a time frame always perform a lot better. And then another important element is to have some sort of unique mechanism attached to your process. So even if, let's say, your process is pretty basic and not too unconventional, you still want to have some sort of like unique name to your process or something that really creates that unique mechanism feel. So you offer something that nobody else in your lane can really offer their audience. And then you want to be able to actually offer that dream outcome to your ICP without the thing they hate or fear. And again, all of these things you're going to plug and play based on your audience research. And if you can add some sort of risk reversal, like a guarantee, for example, like, hey, get X result in Y amounts of time, or your money back, or I'll keep on working with you for free until you do hit X result, it's going to make it an extremely powerful offer that really is a no-brainer for your audience. And this is all based off of Alex Hormozi's value framework. So if you're able to get your market research right and then craft an irresistible offer like this, everything's going to become a lot easier. And with this specific creator, we did some market research, right? I already had a good idea of what the offer was going to look like, but it gave me a few more data points to work with. And then we crafted the offer for this creator. And now that we have the offer, it was time to get proof of concept. Because again, keep in mind, at the time, this creator was 16 years old. He hadn't ever launched a coaching program before and didn't really have experience helping anybody. So he felt super uncomfortable having a whole lot of people join his coaching program at once. He wanted to first work with 5 students at what time, since he was busy with high school and all of that stuff. And then once he kind of felt comfortable with that, he wanted to expand and take on more people. So essentially, for his offer, the actual service delivery or fulfillment was going to be super simple. And we essentially were going to give 5 people in his audience one-on-one access to him, where they would get, like private text messaging 24/7. They would get a weekly one-on-one call with him, weekly group calls, and access to all of that for essentially, I think it was 90 days, something along those lines. And yeah, I like to keep things stupid simple at first to get proof of concept, have a fast feedback loop, and then reiterate on what new data I've gotten, and then start expanding and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and making things complex over time. And yeah, super stupid simple. Now it was time to just get proof of concept on the offer and see if it would actually resonate with his audience and make sure everything goes well. And in terms of the actual traffic generation, it was super simple. We just did an Instagram story sequence. It was a 5-day long sequence where we made his audience aware about this new offer he was launching. We created scarcity, talking about, hey, there's only going to be 5 spots. You need to apply to this. And we had it kind of framed as an interview because that way it really flipped the tables, and his audience had to kind of prove themselves that they were worthy of being in this program, and it made the selling process that much easier. In terms of the funnel, we had just a super simple, and if you don't know what Uform is, it's like a Typeform alternative. In my opinion, I mean, both tools are good. I just prefer Uform because they have a couple features that Typeform doesn't. But both tools, like I said, are perfectly fine. And I will pull up the actual form right here so you guys can see everything we asked. It was pretty simple again. We asked their Instagram username, and then we asked for their personal information, like first name, email, and phone number. And this is something really important because, again, a lot of creators don't understand this concept of friction. And friction is added with every single step that you put in your funnel. And friction can be, added or taken away, even based on the copy of your funnel, right? And the more friction you have, the less leads you're going to get, but the higher quality they're going to be. And the less friction you have, you're going to get more leads, but they're going to be less quality leads. And if you understand this dynamic of friction, you can start to be super intentional about it. And in this case, right, since we only wanted 5 like really good high quality students for this creator, we purposely had a lot of friction in the sales process because the people who were the most committed were going to go through that process and go to the very end and eventually join the program, right? Compared to somebody who isn't committed, if there's too much friction, they're just going to drop off at some point in the funnel. And that's exactly what we wanted because keep in mind, again, these were going to be this creator's first 5 students. So we wanted to get the highest quality students as possible. And that's why for micro creators, I don't necessarily recommend doing a funnel that has some sort of form because forms like this have a drop off rate of around 50% to 70%. So that means out of every 100 people that hit your funnel, on average, only 30 to 50 of those people are going to fill out the whole funnel. So as you can see, that adds a lot of friction. And if you're trying to make as much money as possible, you definitely don't want to do that. And when we actually did our big launch, like our official launch for the full program, I'll show you what we did differently to actually remove that friction. But in this case, right, we just had the form and it worked perfectly. And as you can see here, the first question was asking for their Instagram username compared to their contact info. And this was a very specific move because if you immediately ask for somebody's contact information, it actually adds a lot more friction and people are going to be less likely to complete the whole form compared to if you ask a super simple question. And for example, in this niche, Instagram is super popular for networking and building your personal brand. So asking for somebody's Instagram username is going to be something that everybody's going to want to give out and it's going to be a complete no-brainer. So by us asking for that question first and then getting the contact information, people were a lot more likely to fill out the whole form. If you wanted, you could even play around with putting the contact information at the very end. But essentially, if you want to get the highest amount of completed forms as possible, I would make sure the first question is something super simple that's easy to answer. You could even have like some sort of multiple choice question, because once somebody answers one question, they're going to be more likely to answer the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. So yeah, we asked for their Instagram username, and this was just in case they didn't fill out the whole form. As long as we had their username, we could look at the partial submissions and then hit them up on Instagram and start a conversation from there. But yeah, Instagram username, contact information. We asked how ready they were to actually commit to achieving their goals, and we had a few drop down, a multiple selects answers they could pick. We asked what their biggest struggle was, um, and how it impacted their life. What would happen if they didn't change anything about their current approach? We just had them upload their beats as well, because this was just something specific to this offer that we needed to check. We asked them what their dream goal for their music career was and how do they see this mentorship helping them achieve it. And then finally, we just had to ask a financial qualifying question to kind of get a ballpark to see if this lead was broke or if they were financially qualified. And you always have to be kind of sneaky in a way when you go about asking this question, because if you straight up just drop the price, the amount of people that are going to show up to your sales call or whatever system you're running is going to be a lot less. So you ideally want to figure out a way where you can get a ballpark of how much money somebody has before actually telling them the price of the program. Because if you're selling high ticket and they're not sold already on the fact that your program is going to be the vehicle that takes them from their current state to their desired state, they aren't going to want to spend, however many thousands you're charging for your program. And, but yeah, we just asked them, like, hey, if you're accepted, the mentorship program requires a financial commitment. How much are you ready to invest right now? And that's important to ask as well, because a lot of people will say, like, oh, hey, I'm willing to pay, $4,000. But then they'll show up to the call and they'll be like, hey, yeah, I have bills to pay. I need to wait on my paycheck next week, next month, whatever. And that's just going to be a headache for you or your closers. So, how much are you ready to invest right now to take your career to the next level? And then, we have a couple options. For example, like, hey, I'm not ready to invest. I have, and I'm willing to invest in between 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000. I think we had an option for 3,000 plus. And yeah, so the form was pretty self-explanatory. And essentially, once somebody fills out the form, immediately they get called up. And again, there's another statistic. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I think it's something along the lines of, if somebody fills out, a form, application, whatever, and they don't get dialed within the first 5 minutes, it becomes like 10 times less likely that they're actually going to purchase whatever you're offering. So of course, if you want to make money, make sure as soon as somebody fills something out, they get called. If they don't pick up, make sure you text them ASAP. Because if you think about it, people don't just randomly opt into free trainings, free courses, communities like on the daily. Like people maybe do it, once a week, once a month, once every couple of months. Everybody's slightly different. But the important thing to understand is when somebody opts in for something, they're showing extremely high intent in that specific thing in a super short time frame. And if you don't strike when the iron's hot, like life is pretty crazy. Anything can happen to anybody. So if somebody opts in and then they have to wait 24 hours until they hear anything from your team or you personally, it's going to be way harder to make a sale. So as soon as they filled out the form, they get called. If they don't pick up, they get texted. And then, they respond to the text and we tell them to hop on a call. On the call, they're quickly requalified just to make sure they're actually somebody who's committed and has the money to invest in the program. Pre-frame them a little bit. And if they pass everything, we give them a link to book like the final interview, which is essentially the sales call. And then obviously when the sales call comes around, they show up to the call. Ideally, you go through the sales call process and then they get closed into the program. And we kept this super, super simple. This funnel I wouldn't recommend for anybody to actually use. Again, if you're trying to make the most amount of money as possible, because you're going to get a lot of leakage and a lot of qualified people are going to slip through the cracks and not join your program. But like I said, the reason we had this funnel with a high amount of friction is because we only wanted 5 people and we wanted super high quality people to actually join the program, right? Since we're only looking for 5, and obviously we had a lot more than 5 people fill out the form, a lot more than 5 people who were qualified. And I tried to convince this creator to, take on more people, but he was super strict on wanting to only do 5. So obviously, like, that's what he wanted to do. That's what we did. And since this funnel had a high amount of friction, we literally closed the first 5 people that hopped up on the sales calls. We didn't have a single no show or a single no close. Literally, the first 5 people that showed up on their calls got closed. 100% close rate. And I actually took the sales calls myself because whenever I'm running an offer that is new to me or starting a new offer, again, the sales calls are another important step of the market research because you're directly talking with your ICP and you can go even more in depth and get even more data points. And a really important thing to do also is make sure you record every single sales call. Not only for the sales process. So if you have closers and whatever, you want to be able to, have like quality control and make sure the closers are doing their job and seeing what can be improved. But also you can directly see the common themes between people who close into your program and common objections you get. And if you use a tool like Fathom that's completely free and will literally record your whole video, record a transcript, and has AI integrations, it makes it super easy to get a lot more data points so you can keep on improving your offer and your sales process. And yeah, anyways, in terms of the sales process, that was pretty much it. We went over the funnel already. The traffic generation was just the Instagram story sequence. And like I said, for the next launch that we did for the actual program, I'll go over into specifically like how we did the Instagram story sequence and how we made it super effective. And then in terms of the onboarding, super, super simple. We just used WAP. If you haven't heard of them, you're probably living under a rock. They're amazing when it comes to communities, info products, etc. Literally, they have their own internal payment processor. So on the sales calls, we send them the link. The leads will pay, and then they'll get onboarded onto WAP, where we built the program itself, where they had access, one-on-one access to the creator. They could book their weekly one-on-one call with the creator, and it also had the weekly group calls. So super simple, and yeah, again, it was really nice having only 5 people that were super, super high intent just to get proof of concept for my creator, because now he could actually focus on getting not only results for himself, but social proof that he could get results for other people as well. Because at the end of the day, the biggest factor that's going to make somebody want to buy your program from you isn't going to be the results that you've gotten for yourself, but them being able to see that you can help other people just like them get results. And the more social proof you have of, student case studies, testimonials, etc., the easier it's going to be for people to buy your program, no matter how bad your sales process is and no matter how bad your funnel is, marketing, all of those things. So yeah, that was pretty much like the first mini launch just to get proof of concept. It went really, really well. And phase two essentially is where we kind of scaled everything up and got ready for the big boy launch and, actually focusing and optimizing for making as much money as possible. So, right after we closed those 5 leads and my creator was working with his 5 students, in the meantime, I had him keep on uploading on YouTube pretty consistently so he could grow his audience. And in the meantime, I set up a free lead magnet, which was essentially just a free training that kind of was framed in a similar way of what the offer was to make sure we attract people that would be interested in the offer to actually click on the free training. So from the YouTube, we would send them to a link where they opt in for the free training. In order to get access to it, they would need to give us their name, phone number, and email. And this was really important because I actually built out an email sequence where every 2 days it would email those leads who opted in. And the purpose of these emails was to really nurture these leads so this creator would stay top of mind for them. So then eventually, when we did do our second launch, they would be notified through email that, hey, he has a program and that it's going to be dropping. And then, if they want to achieve XYZ transformation, whatever, they can join. And yeah, you just want to make sure you have as many touch points as possible and as many like different lanes where you can communicate with your audience, because again, the more time they spend consuming your content, whether that be YouTube, emails, short form, blogs, all of that stuff, the more likely they're going to be to buy. And to expand on that 7-11-4 rule that I talked about, that was based on Google study, basically somebody has to watch 7 hours of your content and have 11 different touch points along 4 different platforms. I think I might be mixing up the touch points and the platforms, but I'm pretty sure I said it the right way. Essentially, it means like if somebody's consuming your YouTube, also your TikTok, and also they're getting emails from you, and they're also, let's say, I don't know, they watch somebody else's channel and you went on a podcast on another creator they liked or whatever. Those are like all different platforms and different touch points. And yeah, if you send like 3 different emails during the week, those are 3 different touch points that that person in your audience is getting from you. And yeah, so email is obviously super important. Again, I won't go super in depth into every single email that I scripted, but just to give you the overall gist of it. I already knew a lot about this creator's audience, and I scripted out these emails to provide a bunch of value and make it sound exactly like the creator himself wrote these. And um, the subject lines were super important. We did a bunch of testing just to see what really would get the clicks. Because again, you could have a really good email, but if nobody clicks and opens it up, it's pretty useless. And another important thing that I want to state about the emails is you need to know how to have super high deliverability, because obviously everybody and their mom is sending emails, and there's a bunch of spam and junk email out there. So Google has really complex algorithms, and if you use specific language that Google doesn't like, they're going to send your emails to the spam or promotions folder. If your email isn't warmed up and you just start sending tens of thousands of emails without having like any reputation built up with Google, again, they're gonna send you to spam or promotions. And if you don't land in the main inbox, you are not going to get opened. So I can definitely drop a YouTube video on how to actually write effective emails, and how to actually have a high deliverability. So if that's something you guys are interested in, just let me know in the comments and I'll be more than happy to do something like that. I'm pretty sure I'll do that anyways, but just let me know. And yeah, so just to recap again, creator was making YouTube videos, working with his existing students to get them the best results possible. And in the meantime, I was sending all the traffic from his YouTube to this free training that essentially was just a lead magnet where we would collect their email and start sending them super value packed emails like every 2 days. And yeah, while that was going on, it was basically time to kind of revamp the offer to make sure when we did launch it, it was more than just something that was put together really quickly. So we improved the offer in multiple ways. First thing is we actually put together over 9 hours of course content. Um, and this was super important because with this creator's existing students, he saw there were common issues that they all had. So instead of him having to spend a lot of time answering the same questions over and over again with every new student, I told him, hey, let's just put together a course. So that way we make this once and then students can keep on watching this and watching this over and over again, so no matter if we have 50 new students that join per month or 100, his workload doesn't change because their common questions are going to be answered from the course. And then instead of giving like unlimited or once a week one-on-ones with the creator, we took that away, and basically they got a single onboarding call with the creator, and then the rest of the calls they got with him were either on weekly group calls. So we changed it so there were weekly group calls twice a week, um, or yeah, all of the other questions were kind of answered in the course that was in there. So essentially, this just made the program a lot more scalable. Like I said, the goal was to not really have my creator have to work double if we had double the amount of people join the program. And yeah, so we improved like the offer in terms of like the service fulfillment that they got, and then improved the offer in terms of like tweaking what they were getting, and like the mechanism, all that stuff that I covered a little bit earlier. Then the another big difference that we had to do is changing the actual funnel. So like I said, I don't really recommend Typeform or any type of forms for a funnel for a micro creator, because you're going to leak a lot of leads. So instead, this is what we did to have a super high conversion rate. And essentially, it was a super simple book a call funnel where somebody goes to the landing page, they watch a VSL. If you don't know what that is, it's a video sales letter. They watch that. That's step one. And then step two is they directly book a call. And this was framed as a free strategy call, but essentially it was, again, the sales call for the program. And this was super effective because, again, super low friction. Somebody clicks on the link, boom, they get a 10-minute video. Again, I had to script out this video, and it followed a certain structure, which basically called out the ICP that we wanted, disqualified anybody who we didn't want in the program, got them to start building up belief in the program, let them know what the offer was, got them to kind of sell themselves on the transformation they could get from this. And at the end of the video, the call to action was like, hey, if this sounds good, and you want to actually achieve XYZ, you can book a free strategy call below. And I won't get into like the specifics of the VSL because, again, that would take a lot more time. I can make a separate video on how to actually make, highly effective VSLs. But again, you don't want to copy what somebody else is doing. You really want to do your own market research and understand how to craft your own unique video sales letter that's going to resonate specifically with the people that you want to attract based on your offer, your market, all of that good stuff. And yeah, when they went to go book a call, it was super simple. The only thing we asked for was their contact info, their age, and then just a financial qualifier question saying like, hey, obviously this program costs money. If you don't have funds to invest in your learning, like, please don't book a call. This isn't for people who just want free advice. And yeah, that was super simple because by having a lot less questions, a lot more people actually filled them out and booked the call. And literally all you need to know before your sales call to see if somebody's qualified is their location, age, and a rough estimate on how much money they have or how much money they make. Because by those three data points, you can like immediately see if something adds up or doesn't. So like if somebody says they have $10,000 to invest, but you see, they're 13 and from India or Africa, like, no hate to those places, but if you see that, you're going to be like, all right, most likely this isn't going to be a qualified lead. Either there's like some sort of language barrier where they didn't understand anything, and I don't want to work with somebody like that because it's going to be really hard to communicate, or they're flat out lying. There is the small percent chance where they could be like a sibling of a Nigerian prince and they have millions and millions of dollars, but let's be honest, that's probably not the case. But you get the whole point of what I'm trying to say. Super low amount of questions, but super high leverage questions that kind of give you a really good idea of who you're going to be talking to. And then now this is where like the secret sauce really comes in. And again, this is a mistake I see a lot of creators make who could be making a lot more money, is after somebody books a call for your program, you need to realize they pretty much just set a countdown timer, and you need to imagine that's like a countdown timer on a bomb. And once that bomb goes off, if you didn't do everything in your power to get that person to sell themselves before they show up on the sales call, your sales call is going to be super brutal. Your closers are going to hate you, and that sales call is going to have to walk them through the whole sales process, and that's really hard to do in just, a 30-minute or 60-minute time period. You want to make sure that you've done everything in your power, so by the time somebody shows up to the sales call, they don't really have any objections, and they have their credit card in hand ready to pay, and your closer just has to collect their information and onboard them. And the way you do that is by having a post booking process. And for this specific creator, what we did was after somebody booked a call, they're redirected to the post booking page, and it immediately tells them, hey, you just booked a call, but your spot isn't saved. You need to follow the next 3 steps in order to actually save your spot. So we actually, like show up and give you your free strategy call instead of giving it to somebody else. So immediately, this is going to make people, it's going to be a really big pattern interrupt, and they're going to start paying attention. And immediately, they watch another confirmation video, and immediately they watch a confirmation video. This is like a 2-minute long video, and essentially it's just a mini VSL, right? And it really frames the call that they're about to get, that they just booked, and the program, and gets them to start taking this seriously and kind of builds up that momentum. And once we did that, then we had them go to their email. We wanted to have them double check the time and date that they booked their call for, make sure it actually worked with their schedule. We told them, hey, if you can't make it or you're late, we're not going to let you reschedule this call. So that actually creates, some FOMO and scarcity. And we said, like, if you confirmed everything and it works great in your email, just click the yes button and it will automatically like confirm your spot. So obviously everybody who does that is going to be a lot more likely to actually show up to their call. And then this is like the most important part. We had them get a access to a case study document that we told them, hey, go through this before your call because it's going to ask you a few questions at the end. And if you do this before your call, it's going to help you get more out of your call, regardless of if you decide to join the program or not. And this essentially does 2 things. First of all, it was a case study document. So I took my creator's most powerful case study that he had at the time and made it into a whole like homework document that was basically scripted in a way to build belief in the program and build even more trust, and really get anybody who is reading it to sell themselves on the fact that, like, hey, not only does this creator get results for himself, but he can do it for me as well, because look at what he did for this person. And essentially, this document is really powerful too, because the best way to handle objections is to prevent them in the first place, right? So if this document is able to pre-handle the most common objections we're going to get on the call, it'll make the call process go that much easier. So again, the way I wrote this, pre-handled objections, got anybody who read it to build belief in the program. And then at the end, we had a couple of questions. And again, this was really important because if somebody booked a call, they already have high intent. Then if we tell them, hey, fill out this document, it's going to help you get even better results on your call. By them reading this, not only are they starting to sell themselves on the program, but by going and taking the time out of their day to really think and answer the questions we put at the bottom of this, they're building up their momentum in terms of like commitment level for everything they've done so far. So if they've booked the call, they've watched the video, confirmed the time, they've downloaded this document, they've read it, they really believe this can help them, and then now they've taken the time to answer these questions, there's a really small chance that they're not going to show up to the call anymore. And obviously, like, you're always going to get no shows, because there's always going to be people that aren't committed to anything no matter what. But this really boosts the show rate. And again, it's just another sales asset that really helps get somebody to sell themselves on your program before even hopping on a call with yourself or your closer. The other important thing I wanted to mention is, again, as soon as somebody books a call, they immediately get texted by the closer and they tell them, like, hey, what's up, name? Saw you booked a call for this program for tomorrow, whatever. Is that correct? That person responds and they say yes. And then another important thing about the case study document is it gave a supernatural way for the closer to start a conversation with the lead, because all the closer had to do after they get a confirmation that that person booked the call is ask them like, hey, did you get to check out the document? And 9 times out of 10, the people would say like, yeah, I did. But if they didn't, we'd say like, oh, hey, make sure you actually go through this document before you show up on the call because it'll help you get more out of it. And they'll be like, oh, thank you so much. Where do I get it? The closer would send it and we'll say like, hey, you know, um, just in case you haven't filled out these questions yet, please make sure to fill them out because again, it's going to help us help you better on the call. And by doing this, literally every single person that was texted within 5 minutes after booking their call showed up to their call. Again, we still had like one or two no-shows. That's going to be almost impossible to avoid, but we had over a 90% show up rate, which is absolutely insane. And yeah, it's literally because of having that case study document and then having the closer text them and start a conversation and get them hyped up for the call and really build up their the momentum of the lead and commitment level so they actually do show up to the call. And the last and final piece of this launch was essentially the traffic generation. So now you guys know what the offer was, how the service delivery was structured, the sales process, and the final thing is how did we actually generate traffic to take them to the funnel? And we used three different strategies. We had a 5-day launch sequence that was on Instagram and the email. And then we also leveraged this creator's YouTube profile as well, because we want to hit his audience from every single possible angle that we have. So to break down the Instagram story sequence, super simple. Essentially, it's kind of the same process of how a new movie gets released. They tease the movie, they build up hype, and then by the time the release date comes, everybody's lining up at the movie theater so they can be the first to watch it. And that's the exact same thing we did here. The first day, we immediately had a hook on the story. And this is actually what we did with every single day. You want your first line of your story to always be some sort of pattern interrupt or hook that immediately catches your audience's attention, because you've probably seen it before when people go on Instagram and they start swiping through stories. They barely take a second to look at what the story is and they're just swiping on to the next thing. So we have some sort of pattern interrupt and a hook. And on the first day, we just asked a super simple poll. And I really like having polls in Instagram story sequences or some sort of like emoji reaction, something like that. Because if Instagram sees that your story is getting reacted to, it's going to push it to more people in your audience. And obviously, we want as many people as possible to actually see this Instagram story sequence. So we had the hook and the pull really to get people engaged. Day two, we had another hook, but this hook was specifically framed around a common objection that a lot of this creator's audience has, and we kind of destroyed that objection within the hook itself. So now people are reading this and they're like, wait, what? What's going on? They're really interested. And then, we asked a question on the second slide that was in regards to like kind of the dream desire of the ICP. Day three, the hook was based on a student result. And then day four was where the hook was actually based around the offer. So, like, explicitly stating, like, hey, everything you've seen, um, I've been, posting on my story because I have this offer, this program that's going to give you XYZ, all of that good stuff. And yeah, this was basically on this day, we wanted to explicitly state everything about the offer, so the audience was actually fully aware of what was going on and what this creator was offering them. Then on the next slide of that day, we just spammed some student results to build up belief in the program, and then we set a timer for tomorrow. And then the day 5, which was like the official day of the launch, we sent them to the application page of the funnel, which was, the landing page with the VSL where they watched the video and then booked the call. The next slide for that day is we showed like the consequences of not taking action. So we really tried to get the audience to think in the long term and realize if they don't take action right now, nothing in their situation is going to change. And this is going to be the thing that will finally, take them from point A to point B. And then we recapped some results again. And then we also posted on day 6 and day 7. And essentially on day 6, we just answered questions, hosted like a little Q&A about the program, and this just raised more awareness. And then on day 7, we kind of had another light call to action, and created some like genuine FOMO and scarcity by talking and showing proof on like how many people were DMing, asking questions about the program, how many people were applying and saying like, hey, this demand for this program has been like super overwhelming. I'm not really sure how many more people I can take. Like right now's your chance. Stuff along those lines. And yeah, this was super effective because, you know, people saw these stories and they went and booked a call. And yeah, we're closed into the program in a pretty effortless way. And then finally, like I said, we didn't just do the Instagram story sequence and the email sequence, but we also leveraged the creator's YouTube. So on day 5 of the launch, on day 5 of the actual campaign where we launched the funnel, I also scripted out a YouTube video for my creator to post on that day. And this video was framed like any other YouTube video, but secretly, it was just another like VSL for the program itself. And again, this was super effective because the people who are watching this creator's YouTube were the highest quality audience, that were the most interested in what my creator had to say, and they had like the deepest connection. So again, not everybody might have been following his Instagram, not everybody might have been opening up his emails, but the people who are watching his YouTube, if they saw that like mini VSL and were made aware about the program, we had a lot of people opt in through that video as well. And yeah, again, the more angles we hit people from, the more they're gonna like feel like they're missing out if they don't actually take action on this. And at the time of this launch, I think this creator had I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but in between 4 and 5,000 subscribers. So again, this goes to show you don't need a massive audience to make a lot of money. Like you just really need to understand your audience and provide not only a super high quality product, but you need to make sure people actually know about that product and take action to get their hands on it. Because you could have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it at the end of the day, again, you're not going to make money. Or if everybody knows about your product but your product is horrible, again, you're not going to make money. And yeah, that was essentially everything in terms of like how we were able to get to that 28K in literally 90 days. Um, and yeah, I think the last thing I want to go over real quick is just breaking down the results in terms of the numbers and giving some key takeaways. And like I said, we had almost 100% show rate for that launch. We had over a 60% close rate, which is again really good. And a really important thing for you guys to understand is you need to be tracking all your numbers, because if you're not tracking your numbers, it'll be like trying to fly an airplane without any of the control instruments on. By tracking the numbers, you're really able to see like what your highest leverage plays are and where there's like the most leakage in your system. So the main things I recommend anybody tracks is how many people are actually going to your funnel, because you want to make sure it's actually converting. Because if everybody's watching your YouTube videos or, short form videos on Instagram or TikTok, but nobody's actually going to your funnel, you can see it's probably a problem within like your call to actions. So you want to see how many people are going to your funnel. You want to see how many people are actually opting in, whether it be some sort of lead magnet you have or, booking a call, whatever. You want to see the percentage of people who visit that actually convert. And then if you're doing some sort of like dialing sequence or SMS sequence, you want to see how many people actually pick up and what the response rate is to that. And then again, if you're doing calls, which if you're doing a high ticket program, you better be doing some sort of sales call. You want to see what the show rate is and what the close rate is. And if you're able to track all of those, you'll have a really good idea on everything that's performing in this whole system and what really needs to be fixed. And yeah, by doing all of that, you can see just by making one change what's going to be like the highest leverage move that's going to increase your income. And in terms of scaling for this offer, I mean, like moving forward for this creator, after that second launch, we had a lot of sales calls. So we definitely utilized all the analysis from those calls to get even more in-depth market research to refine the marketing, the messaging, the actual offer itself, to see what the most common objections were and how to make a post-booking process that pre-handled even more objections, so then people showed up to the calls even more ready to buy. And yeah, actually after taking a look at all those sales calls and adding some more sales assets that were consumed after somebody books a call, our close rate has jumped up to over 80%, which again is extremely high. um and yeah, now for this creator, we are starting to implement like a short form strategy as well, because like I said, short form isn't good for nurturing leads, but it's really good for generating traffic. And then you rely on the long form videos to really nurture that traffic. So we're also implementing kind of like an advanced long form content strategy. That was pretty much it. I've been recording this video for over an hour now, so I hope it doesn't end up being too long once I edit it. But I really wanted to go in depth to show you guys like everything that we really went over. Um, because if you weren't aware of everything that actually goes into running something like this, now you'll realize like it really is, I think, more than the average person realizes. But at the same time, you don't have to make it overly complex. You just need to focus on the right things. And of course, there's a lot of things that I didn't go over. This was just like a general overview. I didn't cover any of like the automations and a bunch of other stuff on the back end. But again, I wanted to make just a video that was straightforward and packed with a lot of value so you guys can see exactly what I did for this specific creator and how you can implement it for yourselves. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. If again you are some sort of like content creator, you have a personal brand or you're a coach, consultant, and you want to start or scale your info product or coaching business, I hope you genuinely got some value from this video. And if you are somebody like that, or maybe you're somebody who has some sort of skill that you really want to monetize and you have an idea for some sort of coaching business or info product that you can start, but you haven't built up your audience yet, regardless if you fall into one of those two categories, I'll leave a link down in the description below where you can book a free audit with me, where I'll essentially analyze your whole situation and give you just genuine advice on what I would recommend on you implementing for your specific online business so you can actually, either start it or scale it effectively and systemize it in a way where you'll have the least amount of headaches as possible and be able to make as much money as possible, but also really serve your audience at the highest level. And like I said, If you're interested in that, I'll leave the description down below. It'll be a completely free audit with me. My goal is to leave you better than I found you, regardless of if you decide that you want to work with me or not. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave any questions you have in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video.